Greetings, people of Earth. Welcome back. My name is Jack, and today we are talking about chapter 32 of the Tao Te Ching, illustrated edition. I'll let you look at the picture like a 6-year-old. Don't worry. So this is a very fascinating chapter that discusses the idea of a perfect society, why we have to be careful when we name things. I think it's got a lot of hidden wisdom. I think it's one of these underrated chapters in the Tao that when you look into and when you start thinking about it, you kind of blow your mind because you're realizing that the concepts it's talking about seem really simple on paper. Like they seem really basic and easy to understand. But then you start thinking about them and you kind of go, oh my gosh, this is talking about everything in the universe and how we perceive huge concepts and individuals and society. And you just kind of like, you can spiral and really start thinking about it neat. So I hope you enjoy it as much as I do. I'm going to read it, then we're going to talk about it. The Harmonious Dao. The Tao is infinite, nameless, and unformed. Small it may be, but no one may master it. Lords and rulers who cherish it will bring everything naturally under their dominion. Under its influence, heaven and earth are in harmony, sending down a sweet essence, which spreads evenly beyond man's control. When control and regulation are initiated, we give these things names. But in giving names, we must know when to stop. For knowing when to stop is our safeguard. We may say that the Tao's relationship to the world is like that of valleys to rivers and rivers to the ocean. Whoa, right? Crazy. So this is, at first, this chapter is going back to the first chapter where it talks about the Tao that can be named is not the eternal Tao. And this concept's really important to understand. If you want to understand Taoism, you need to understand that the Tao, like the thing we talk about that's Tao, is not actually the Tao. It's this placeholder name, you know? Like you don't worship the Tao, you don't do any of that. The Tao that we're talking about is a placeholder name for this indescribable concept that is every fabric and nature of the universe and how we're here and how the universe began and how it shifts and moves and changes and alters itself and also how it stays the exact same. Like we as a society, as a species, use names as a way of understanding something. You know, if you put a name on it, if you call a spade, you are defining it in a very specific category. You are, you know, when I say comedy show, you think of a comedy show. But if I say drama, like a drama show, you think of something different, right? So those names help put things into concrete boxes that we are able to understand as concepts, you know? You can say horror movie or comedy movie or romantic comedy. And all of these things have very specific tropes and things about them that we would all identify. You know, you can tell when a horror movie happens by some of the tropes in a horror movie. The Tao is indescribable. So we say Tao, but that's just a placeholder name. And as Taoists, one of our responsibilities is to understand that the real thing that we're trying to talk about isn't actually nameable. You know, we call it Tao as a placeholder name, but it is not the eternal, endless, infinite energy and concept that flows in and out of reality. You know, that thing we can't really describe. Even in my brief description just there, I missed a whole bunch of stuff. Like that is a hugely simplistic definition, but we need a name. We're humans. We need a name. And so we use Tao. I think another really interesting part of this discussion is the concept of naming things. and moving that concept from Dao to everything else. So here's an example. I am on the autism spectrum. I'm autistic. When I say autistic, you will have very concrete thoughts and images flood through your head very quickly about what it means to be autistic. Maybe you have a friend or a family member who is also on the spectrum. Maybe you have seen television and movie clips. Maybe you have seen people out and about who you think might be autistic. But when I say it, you have a very concrete understanding, or at least you think you do, of what it means to be autistic. This definition has an impact on me and it has an impact on you. You know, I view myself as someone with autism, and sometimes people will come up to me and say, well, you don't seem autistic. And they'll say things like that. And it's a complicated situation because I am, you know, like I exhibit a huge amount of the traits that name comes along with. But at the same time, I have a lot of differences than other people. I think a really good saying is, if you've met one person with autism, you have met one person with autism. And I really like that because we are all unique and individual. I was talking with a friend recently about how, as a kid, I was diagnosed with ADD, attention deficit disorder. And he asked what the difference between that and ADHD is. And I had no idea. We Googled it. Apparently, they're almost synonymous now in terms of certain medical definitions. In other medical definitions, they're totally different and they have different symptoms and everything. But the point is, we use these names to try and understand concepts. And unfortunately, sometimes naming something doesn't give you a better understanding of it. It actually clouds your judgment and it clouds your ability to understand this concept in a concrete or proper way. So that is why naming can be very dangerous. And that is why we don't name the Tao, is we don't try and enhance our understanding of it by giving it some concrete name, because that would only lower our understanding of it. So this is some really like high level wisdom. And I would be very grateful if in the comments you could talk about when naming something doesn't help. If you could give me your examples of when you give something a name and it actually doesn't help your understanding of the thing, or it clouds it, because realistically, there are a lot of concepts in the world, in our lives, that naming doesn't really work for. You know, there are going to be nuances and things change, things go through phases. So giving something a name can actually be quite detrimental to our understanding of the thing. And that's at the root of this chapter and why we have to be really careful. Two other things I want to touch on. This chapter discusses why it is extremely difficult to have a perfect society, because it talks about lords and rulers and, you know, understanding how these things work and how the Tao is nameless and unformed. And because of that, it is near impossible to get a complete understanding of Tao. And thus, the rulers and the lords of these places need to understand that they're going to screw up, that there are going to be problems that are out of your control. There are going to be problems that you cause inadvertently when you're trying to control it. And so it's sort of this humble understanding that nothing is perfect and it can't be perfect. And even the word perfect is a impossible to describe quality, you know, like it's like the Tao, perfection. What is perfection? Who knows? Nobody has ever seen perfection, because there is always things that can be tweaked and improved and modified and changed. And the concept of perfect is nameless. You can't actually understand it. So the idea of a perfect society, what would that look like? What is perfect? How would you describe it? Who's there? Who gets to be there? So you get these concepts where you just can't understand them. And the last one, I want to read you the last line and talk about that. When we say that the Tao's relationship to the world is like that of valleys to rivers and rivers to the oceans. So this is talking about the origin of things, or at least that's kind of my understanding of it. And the idea that valleys lead to create rivers. A big valley, it starts raining, all that water's got to go somewhere. So then you get a river, and then the river leads to the ocean. We can talk about the water cycle and how everything is a circular cycle nature. But essentially, like, it's a symbiotic relationship, and the Tao connects us all. It connects the world. It is this fabric of nature. It is the glue of the world. It is everything and nothing, like we talk about these extreme polar opposites that are actually very similar. The concept that you really need to understand in this chapter is that a name does not always define something. It doesn't always give you a better understanding of the thing itself. And some things in life are better left unnamed. They're left to the infinity of our imagination, Putting the word Dao, D-A-O, on a concept doesn't make you understand it any better. And same with wisdom, same with perfection, same with a huge amount of the concepts we have in life. Just because we have a name for them doesn't mean we understand them. So that's the key part. And also accepting that concept. That's probably the biggest part of this chapter, is I accept that I will probably never understand the Tao in its entirety. Actually, I'm going to rephrase that. I accept that I will absolutely not understand the Tao in its entirety. And I understand that Tao is just a placeholder name that we use to describe this indescribable concept of life and perception and memory and time and space and evolution and everything, like it is an indescribable concept. But by doing our best to describe it, we can have somewhat of an understanding of it, as long as we're also aware that we will never understand it fully. That was a lot. I think I'm going to leave it there. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Like I said, tell me about a concept you think just because we have a name for it doesn't mean we understand it, I would be very curious as to see what you guys can come up with. Thank you for watching. As always, if you enjoy these videos, like and subscribe. We're getting there. We're getting through this book slowly but surely. These episodes are really enjoyable to do. I hope you like them. We will finish this book at some point, which is crazy. And at the end of it, we will be able to say that we do not understand Taoism at all, because that's kind of the whole point, is you don't. We'll get into that in the next chapter, actually. So thank you for watching. Hope you have a beautiful day, week, month, year, century, millennium, whatever you're having. I hope it's amazing. And as always, I will talk to you guys tomorrow.